Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today is a solo episode, and I have a topic I want to dive into, and that is fitness in my 20s versus in my 30s. I think this will be a super interesting conversation for a lot of people. But first, before I go into that, I just want to go over a few ways you can help support the podcast. So first, if you have found this podcast to be helpful in any way, if you could leave a rating and review, and that will help more people find this podcast. So if this has been helpful for you in any way, please do that, and more people will find this. Again, I appreciate everybody who listens to this podcast. Next, I have my free masterclass on body recomp, what it is, how to do it, go through all my methods, why we do the things we do to lose body fat, build muscle. So if you're struggling with that, go and check that out. I also have my free masterclass on nutrition periodization, what it is, how to do it. I go over each nutrition phase, how to set it up, common mistakes, adjustments, really everything that you need to know about each nutrition phase is in that. So if you're interested in that, the link to that is also in the show notes. Lastly, if you haven't yet, give me a follow on Instagram, Jeff, and that's where I'm most active on social media. So if you have any questions, maybe I say something on here that doesn't make sense, maybe you need some clarification on it, that would be the place that you would find me and ask me those questions. So with that out of the way, let's dive into today's topic. So fitness in my 30s versus in my 20s. I think for me, the 20s, and I think this is pretty common for most people, it was more about just forcing a look. I thought by going to the gym, training hard, building muscle, that I was concerned about my overall health, but there's a lot of things that I overlooked. And again, I just was really just focused on forcing a look. And I think that for most of us, we get into training nutrition to improve our look. I would say that's probably why most people get in it, but, and that's a good starting point. But if that becomes your only kind of thing that you're focused on, and again, I talk about this a lot with my health first approach versus a looks first approach. Health first approach usually means that as a byproduct of focusing on that, we end up improving our looks. Whereas usually when you take a looks first approach, you can end up compromising health at some point if you're not careful with it, and depending on what your methods are. So again, this is why with all my clients, I take a health first approach. And part of this came from myself basically learning from my mistakes that I made in my 20s and making sure that people don't also make those same mistakes. Fitness in my 30s, it does still have some resemblance to my 20s. I'm focused on a lot more than just looking better. And the result, as I said, when you take this health first approach, is a better physique overall. So I want to talk about the differences here. All right, so fitness in my 20s, what did this look like? Basically, I just want to be as big as possible. I didn't care about how much or how quickly I gained weight. I just want it to be big. And I was forcing a certain look. I think this led to less muscle growth and more fat gain than I wanted. I remember I was a skinny kid growing up and short as well too, which not a great combo. And one of the things I did have control over was building muscle. And I remember, if anybody remembers this, I'd love to hear you guys reach out to me on this. But one of the things that was popular around this time when I was 18 to 22-ish years old, when I really was like, all right, I want to get bigger. I want to build some muscle. I want to be super jacked. One of them, I got a couple things here that happened. So first, Jersey Shore, if anyone remembers that show, that was something where they were super into working out, being tan. Again, they were definitely just focused on looks for sure. That was definitely a looks first approach. But seeing them, that definitely made me want to put on more muscle. I was like, man, this is awesome. That's definitely something I want. And then you also there was a football player named LaRon Landry. He was like a Muscle Farm athlete, if anybody remembers Muscle Farm. And man, this guy was just huge. If you look up pictures of LaRon Landry, there's somewhere it's just something that almost wasn't even realistic. And I was like, man, I want to look like that guy. And sure enough, I think he was busted for PEDs a few years later. Shocker on that, right? But these were things that I wanted to look like these people, and I felt like I didn't look like that. And this led to me figuring out, hey, how to build muscle. Well, obviously, you need to lift weights. I was doing that for a while, but I saw some strength gains. I saw a little bit of muscle growth, but nothing crazy. Finally, after years of people telling me, hey, you need to eat to build muscle, I made it my mission to try to put on as much weight as I could. And I remember this period of time in college where that was my sole focus. It was just eating. But now on top of this, I ate a lot. I remember I would eat a ton of carbs. My face started to break out again during this period of time, which is super interesting, especially at 22. Expected in college, but it was definitely a period of time where it was worse. I attribute part of that to really trying to force my weight upwards here. And then I also drank on the weekends as well too, when this wasn't like, hey, I had where it's I might have a glass of wine couple glasses of wine every week or every other week or something like that. It was, hey, we're getting Friday, Saturday night, maybe even Thursday. We're going to get pretty drunk here, have a lot of drinks. Again, not great. I wasn't focused on sleep. These just weren't things I focused on. Also with my training, it was also like I was training, I wanted to train as much as possible. Hey, you want to get big, you need to make sure you're lifting as much and as often as possible. So again, that was another thing I did there with that. And so again, I gained weight, and what did help me build muscle? I definitely built muscle, but in that process of really trying to force this weight gain with all those unhealthy things that I was doing, this did lead to some fat gain. Like I said, I had some skin issues as well too, not only on my face, but on my back as well too. A lot of acne, especially on my back, face a little bit as well. And so these were things, and so I gained that weight. And again, like I said, I got up to, I think in college, it's blurry now at this point, but I want to say when I graduated high school, I was probably somewhere between 130 and 150 in weight, probably closer to 140. Stayed there for a little while, started lifting weights, probably got up to around 150. And then I remember that kind of period of time that I'm talking about, I went down to, moved away. I went to community college for the first 2 years, and I moved away. And in that period of time, that's where I really focused on just eating, ton of carbs, just eating. And I want to say I got my weight up to 190, somewhere around there. And again, I wasn't like overly fat, but you could definitely tell I gained a good amount of body fat and wasn't happy with my physique. I liked how my arms felt in a shirt, but looking back on that physique, again, it wasn't great. And like I said, there was a ton of other things that happened. Really what I'm trying to get at here is really try to force muscle gain. And again, looking back, this is something that just takes time. And yes, you do need to make sure you eat enough. You don't want to be always fat loss dieting. That's not going to be helpful. You also don't want to force feed, and you can't really force yourself to gain muscle. My thought was it was going to be a 1-to-1 ratio of gaining weight was going to be muscle. But again, that's not the case. Adding a ton of muscle, that just takes time. It's something that is going to take years. And I think that for me, that was where I was trying to force it, again, going for that look. And it led to a lot of unhealthy behaviors there with that. So that was my first intro into this fitness in my 20s. Next, I didn't care about cardio. Not only did I not care about cardio, but I thought any amount of cardio I was going to do was going to cause me to lose muscle. So just to make matters even worse, it was just like, oh, I'm just going to lose muscle if I do any cardio. This led to me not moving a ton, not doing any cardio. Again, not great for overall health. I probably hurt my overall health during this period of time, but I also probably impacted my muscle growth because I wasn't moving around. We know that movement, if you're super sedentary, your body's just not going to be as efficient with the nutrients you give it. And on top of it, you also have the fact that, you're not expending as much energy. And that was probably the main reason why I didn't do it, is I'm trying to build as much muscle as possible. I don't want to be doing this stuff that's going to burn a ton of calories, because that's not going to be great. Again, from an overall health perspective, low levels of activity are just not great for overall health. Again, it's probably hurting your muscle growth in that process. So there was that. And that was my reason for why I did that. But then also the cardio, again, one, it sucks. So that was one of the main reasons I didn't want to do it. But then two, I didn't want to do it because, again, I thought if I did any amount, it's like, oh, running, cardio, oh, that's just going to kill your gains. And again, that's going to be great for your overall health. There are, to me, when it comes to cardio, and even if your goal is to maximize muscle growth, you do want to include a little bit in, because I think if you can include some cardio in your training, again, we want to make sure that we're not trying to run marathons every week. That's where you're going to go too far. But to me, it's like a J-shaped curve, right? You do no cardio, you're at the bottom of that curve here. Or I guess it would be a bell curve, not a J-shaped curve. Bell, J, either way, it goes at the bottom. You're here at the bottom where you're not doing any cardio. Okay, that's probably going to be detrimental for muscle building, because you're not doing anything. Muscle building and overall health. I wouldn't say it's going to be detrimental to muscle building, but just from an overall health perspective. And one issue you could run into if you never do cardio is you might not be able to recover as quickly, because doing cardio, having good cardiovascular health, is going to help improve your recovery in between sessions, in between sets. Therefore, you can do more, and that's going to allow you to potentially build muscle. So I guess I would say that it could potentially hurt you there from that standpoint. But then we get to this point to where the more you do, the better it's going to be for you. You're going to have that kind of sweet spot where it's like, all right, this is enough to where now your cardiovascular health's improving, you're recovering way better, your overall health is good, your insulin sensitivity is great. You're in a prime spot here to maximize that. And then you come on the other side, you come over that value, you come down, now you start to do too much. And I think it can potentially impact your muscle building. But for me, in my 20s, it was like none whatsoever. So now in my 30s, it's, hey, yes, I still want to continue to build muscle, but I'm going to make sure that doing enough movement and cardio overall for my overall health. And then I'm just making sure I'm not doing too much, because again, my overall health is important as well too. Another thing I did in my 20s is I just trained arms, chest, and shoulders. Again, it led to me not building as much muscle as I wanted because I neglected certain areas of my body. I think it also led to some overuse injuries, particularly in my shoulder, where my shoulder didn't feel great. But again, part of that was, hey, I was doing a ton of pushing, a ton of bench press. I remember we would do decline press because you could lift more weight doing decline press. I remember I would always just work up to like 225 and try to see how many reps I could get. And believe it or not, I never really progressed. And looking back on it, hey, it makes sense. But again, I neglected legs, anything. Probably didn't train back as much as I should have as well, which again was a big mistake, especially if you're trying to build your upper body. So again, my kind of core movements there were muscle groups I train were arms, chest, and shoulders. So again, less, I just did things that I wanted to do and probably did way too many of them. Hell, hey, I want to have a chest like so and so, boom, let's just freaking hammer out chest all the time and then not do anything else. Another thing I didn't do in my 20s was I didn't focus on sleep or proper nutrition. This led to me not gaining as much muscle as I wanted and being under recovered for my training sessions. I also think this contributed to more of my weight gain being fat mass versus muscle. So not only in that process did I probably go too quickly with the weight gain, but on top of it, my nutrition wasn't necessarily perfect and my sleep was not great either. I didn't focus on those things. And because I went faster, I already probably was gaining a little bit more body fat than I wanted. And then you add these things on top of it and now you're looking again at things adding more body fat than muscle. But again, from a nutrition perspective, there was no structure. It was just whatever was there, whatever was easiest. Again, I didn't really eat many fruit or veggies. Like I said, it was a lot of like carbs. I remember I ate a ton of pasta. I would eat other food, go out to eat and eat other foods. I remember there was this place down in college we went to, and it was like it's like a hibachi where you made your own, you can make your own. It was like all you can eat. And man, I freaking smashed some stuff there with that. But again, not focusing on things outside of nutrition or sleep, not realizing how big of a role those things played in body composition. Again, it was like, hey, I want to be big like this person. Hey, I just need to go and train as much as possible and just stuff my face with food. And I'm going to build that muscle that I wanted. And again, that wasn't the case. The next thing is I lifted as heavy as I could just each session. I didn't focus on overloading or having a plan with my training. I was just trying to lift as heavy as I could on things like bench press and shoulder press. Again, this leads to suboptimal muscle growth and overuse injuries, particularly in my shoulders. So there was no like structure with my training. It was like, hey, what did I train last time? Okay, let's train this muscle group. I'm, watched a TV show or I saw this person. All right, I want to go train that now. So there was no structure to it. It was really just, okay, go in there and just lift, right? Again, no tracking, no structure with training whatsoever. And we know that in order to build muscle, you probably want to be on a dedicated, if you really want to maximize things, being on a dedicated program, sticking with the same exercises, overloading those, adding reps, adding weights, continuing to improve your technique and execution on these lifts. Those are the things we want to do. If you're trying to build muscle and like you're spinning your wheels, first look at your training. If you're just being random with it, each time you go, it's like, what do I want to do today? You're probably going to have random results as well too. If I could go back, definitely wish I would have had some sort of like routine that I would have followed and stuck with that for extended periods of time. Again, that was one of the main things there. Next, again, I already went over this, but very little movement outside of the gym with fear of losing muscle. So this comes back to the cardio, but again, not being active outside of the gym. And again, this is super important. We want to make sure we're staying active. That's great for our health, great for mental health, great for your physical health, great for things like insulin sensitivity. So we want to make sure that we're staying active outside of the gym. All right, so now let's talk fitness in my 30s. What does that look like? So I still want to build muscle, but also improve my overall long-term health through improving cardio and things outside of the gym, like sleep, stress management, movement, and nutrition. I've definitely understood how important these things are, and I place more emphasis there on that. Then training is important. These things are just as, if not more important, or at least things that you can get overly analytical in your training of, oh, I didn't do this in this workout or whatever. But it's if these things are out of whack, it's like those are the things you need to focus on. And these are the things that when clients come to me, these are the things that we can really get dialed in more. Again, training, yes, we obviously can improve it. There's a lot of things people can improve there, but again, these are the bigger rocks. So what does this look like? One, not trying to just weigh as much as possible, but instead be at a weight where I don't have too much body fat, but not too little either, and in a good spot to build muscle. AKA I'm just working with my body rather than trying to force a certain look. So again, it was just like, hey, I just want to gain as much weight as possible, not understanding how body composition works. And just because you're gaining doesn't necessarily mean that's weight muscle that you're gaining. So for me, I used to, I don't want to say tie my self-worth to it, but I put stock into what the scale weight said. It's like, oh man, 160, man, I'm tiny. Just like comparing myself to other people, like I'm 160. So what happened there is it's like, again, it made me want to, because I want it to be big, right? That's why we train. We want to be big. So it was like, hey, I want to see my scale weight go up. But then the other issue was I wasn't super happy with my look. I was like, you just need to continue to build more muscle, but you also need to make sure you're not gaining too much body fat. But I also didn't want to cut, because if I cut, that means my weight was going down and I just felt too small at that point. I was in this no man's land, and I wanted the best of both worlds, but not understanding how things actually worked out there. So now it's in my building phases, making sure that I'm in a weight where my weight's not like trending up too quickly, making sure my weight's not trending down, making sure I'm not too lean, because being too lean, you're probably not in the greatest position to build muscle, but also that is hard to maintain. And maybe from an overall health standpoint, being too lean isn't great. And we have to take everything into consideration. What's that body weight where you feel good, but you also don't have to be overly analytical with every last little thing that you do. And again, maybe for some people, that's not important to them. They would rather be over analytical with everything, and that's okay with them. And maybe that's them being a little bit leaner and they have to really watch every last little thing. Again, for some people that's fine. For me, that's not where I want to be. So it's what is that kind of weight range where, again, I could still look good. I still like my look. I'm still in a good spot to build muscle, but I also don't have to be overly analytical of tracking every last little thing from a nutrition perspective. And saying this has also been something that I've worked towards for a long time. I didn't just get here and I didn't have to track. I do think that in order to really get this kind of awareness, you do need to spend some period of time tracking for a while to get that awareness. And then over time, you can start to back off and rely more on habits and the things that you learned. And so, that's where I'm at now is it's not, oh, hey, I need to just be as heavy as possible. I need to be as big as I can. It's, hey, where I got to work with my body. Again, maybe I'm just, I'm short. So it's like, I think I have fairly solid genetics from a muscle building standpoint, but I don't have amazing ones to where like you'd see on social media, like, holy crap, or again, I just touch a weight and I blow up. I think my genetics are decent. And, I just have to understand that I'm never going to be somebody that's going to be 200 pounds shredded, right? That's just not going to be me. I'm not going to ever be 200 pounds, at least not purposely. Again, hopefully nothing happens. I don't see how at this point. I'm just so ingrained with fitness, nutrition, that I just don't see how this would happen. But again, some people accidentally gain weight and sometimes it happens, but I don't see myself ever being able to get to 200 pounds and being sure. It's just not going to happen at this point. Now, it wouldn't. I don't have the genetics. I don't have the muscle capacity to get there without taking performance enhancing drugs or something like that, which again, now it comes back to, okay, my number one goal is overall health. And look, we can talk, but at the end of the day, taking performance enhancing drugs just for the sole purpose of gaining muscle, is that the most healthy thing in the world? I'm not here to judge, but probably not, right? But again, if that's something you want to do, then and you're okay with some of those potential trade-offs. Again, I think if you do things in a smart way, then I think you can mitigate some of the risk. There's still probably some risk with it. So again, if you're going to do it, make sure you're doing it with somebody who really knows what they're doing. My only thing with this is I find that if somebody wants to get on performance enhancing drugs before they really maximized everything, are they also going to follow that in a smart way? Maybe not. But again, we can't say for sure. And saying that, I do think there would be some benefit to potentially taking, say, TRT or something like that. Say maybe 5-10 years down the line, it's, hey, I'm really maxing out my sleep, nutrition, all these things are on track, and testosterone is still low for me as I get into my 40s. Maybe that would be something that I would potentially consider. There's going to be some pros and cons of doing that. Honestly, don't know how I got to this point, but really what I'm trying to get at here is I'm working with my body and understand, and I'm more comfortable with how it is versus trying to maybe go towards something that I won't be, if that makes sense. Again, fitness in my 30s also is I want to maintain at least a decent amount of cardiovascular health endurance. Right now I'm doing 2 days of dedicated cardio per week. So again, this is super important to me as I get older, is I want to be able to have good cardiovascular health overall. Again, I think that endurance side of things is super important. It's really cool to be able to, for example, and I'm sure as my son's coming here in the next couple months, and as we have other kids and stuff. And one thing I already noticed is I'll run around with Dale in the basement to get out some of his energy, and I'm just running in circles with him. And I think if I wasn't doing dedicated cardio, I think that would be a lot harder. I think that would be a lot tougher to do, and it really does help. I think it really helps give you energy throughout the day. And again, from the overall health standpoint, that's super important. Again, making sure I have this, at least a decent amount of cardiovascular health endurance, is super important to me as I age. And so being able to continue to do this, I think it would be super cool to just be able to, like, if I don't really train for it, hey, I can still go and I can run long distances or do things for extended periods of time because I'm taking care of that. And I think you just feel better too. I think that when your cardiovascular health is in a good spot, I think you feel better overall, just from day to day. Again, you recover better, less inflammation. So again, I think that's super important. Again, smarter training, right? This is another thing. Being on a structured program, listening to my body more, and not always trying to push 100% in every session. Always focused on improving my execution and technique with training, and focused on future training sessions and not just the current one. So this still is hard to do sometimes. If I have something that doesn't feel good, hey, I need to back off. I need to also, I'm not trying to go 100% every single time I train. I think when people do that, it's from a place of they feel like they want to get somewhere super quick and they need it now. And I think that's where that kind of mindset, at least that was how it was for me. It's like, I want to have the most muscle possible. So I need to do the most amount right now. When again, you got to understand that if you really want to change your body long-term, you have to be able to string together months and years on end of productive training, not just 2 sessions. And when you focus on just pushing yourself to the max in one session, to me, that makes me think, again, I don't think that's wrong all the time, but I don't think that's, yeah, it's not wrong all the time, but if that's what you do all the time is you push yourself 100%, I do think that's something that is going to catch up to you. You're going to get burnt out, and you're not going to be able to string together these extended periods of time. You're going to get burnt out, all these things, injured, stuff like that. And so again, listening to my body and being okay with taking a step back if I need to for a day or for a couple days, taking some lighter weeks. Again, not every session is the max out session. Again, that was a big change from 20s to 30s. And it wasn't like, oh, I worked so hard. It was literally from a mindset of, I feel if I felt like I didn't do that, I was going to lose all my muscle. And again, that's not a great place to be. And I see that a lot with people that come and work with me. They really missing one session. They think that they can't back off a session, things like that. Now, again, you could take this too far and you never push yourself at all. And that's an issue in of itself. So it really depends on where you're at. And I've been saying this throughout, but again, more focus on my overall health, making sure sleep is in a good spot, making sure nutrition is flexible, but also gives my body the nutrients it needs. So again, making sure I prioritize sleep. That's something that's super important to me. Now, obviously, we have a kid coming here soon. That's probably going to be something that is probably not going to be great for a little while. But again, still trying to prioritize that, knowing the good sleep hygiene habits and really trying to do as many of those as I can is going to be important. And then nutrition. This is the same thing, right? It comes back to the 100% and trying to push every single training session. Again, like this is where people can get overly caught up in like feeling like they have to be 100% perfect with their nutrition. First of all, what does that even look like? And that can lead to a lot of issues. So making sure that nutrition is flexible, but it also is giving my body the nutrients it needs. So I'm being flexible and enjoying foods, but I'm also not going too far away from making sure that I still have the nutrients that it needs, right? So making sure I'm still getting in enough protein, making sure I'm getting good sources of carbs, making sure I'm getting some veggie in, making sure I'm getting some fruit in, getting a wide range of foods, right? We're doing some nuts, we're doing some olive oil, we're doing like whole grain carbohydrates with fiber. We're doing maybe some more quick digestible type of carbohydrates. We're getting some beans in, we're getting animal sources of protein, but even within animal sources of protein, I'm mixing it up between some poultry, some red meat, dairy, right? We're not just getting it from the same sources. So having flexibility, but also getting a good base in, but having that flexibility in terms of, hey, I'm still going to go enjoy food. Like if there's an event and there's pizza there, I'm going to have some pizza. I'm not going to say no to it. Now, again, being in a phase where I'm not necessarily pushing weight down definitely helps. This would change if I was actively trying to drop body fat, which I'll continue to do from time to time as well. But another big one too is digestion. This is something that when I look back in my 20s, this was terrible. I would have times where I would be very bloated, very gassy, have bouts of days where, my stomach was really messed up and it was very diarrhea-ish type stool for a while, right? And it was just like, oh, not really thinking into it. But now the more I know, it's, man, this makes sense why this was happening. Those things as well too. And what's been helpful there, again, I think less alcohol, better sleep, better stress management, and just better food choices overall, I think has been the things that have really helped me there with that. Understanding what bothers my stomach and what amounts as well too. I think that's another thing that can be helpful is, okay, this bothers your stomach, but is it the dosage that's important, right? Because I think a lot of times people think, oh, this food is bad. This food is going to cause me to have stomach issues, but it's okay. Is it the dosage that we need to look at as well? So takeaways from this, by focusing on more than just my look and trying to force a certain look, I have improved my health and physique as a side effect. And again, this is what I try to teach clients. By taking a health first approach, you improve your look as a side effect. When you take a looks first approach, you don't improve your health. And in most cases, and you don't always improve your look in that process. So we need to take this health first approach. And this is going to be a little bit different for each person. For some people, this could be really honing in on the mindset side of things. For some people, this could really be honing in on the lifestyle. For some people, this could really be honing in on the nutrition, right? Maybe it's dialing back training. So this looks different for everyone, but really trying to take that health first approach, I have found to be what set clients up for success. And one way I do this is when I get a new client, we're always going to take this kind of baseline phase, this health baseline phase. You can call it a primer phase, whatever you want to call it. And we're making sure their habits are in check, because that way, if we do that first, then no matter what, if we're trying to build muscle or we're trying to lose body fat or a combination of both, we're setting your body up to be able to be more it's going to just be less friction of reaching your goal if we do this. Whereas if you do it the other way, it's like you're going to have to work a lot harder to see any results. And so we want to make sure that we really take time to get you set up in this primer baseline health phase. And then from there, we can really start to focus on seeing the results you want to see. And the cool thing is 9 times out of 10 in that health primer baseline phase, people see results because they're working on these big limiting factors. So that's it for this episode. I hope this was insightful. I hope this gives you a better idea of maybe how to start to handle your fitness and nutrition as you're in your 30s and 40s and beyond, and maybe how you can see how maybe what you did in your teens and 20s wasn't necessarily the greatest. So that's it for this episode. If you guys are interested in learning more about my coaching, I have my free 30-minute strategy call. With that, we go over what your goals are, where you want to go, and how we can get there. Worst case, if you decide you don't want to do any coaching, you at least have a game plan mapped out for your next little bit, and you'll have more clarity on where you need to go. So if you're interested in that, the link to that is in the show notes. That's it for this episode, and I will chat with you guys next time.